Good morning, everybody. It's a bit of a distance to my podium. I'll just speak in English first to explain why I'm going to speak in German. I think it's important for us to remember that this conference, this event, is a dialogue. And I'm doing this to let you know that it's very important in order to have dialogue to be able to communicate with each other. And one of the problems we have on our continent, or let me call it a challenge because I don't want to be negative, is that we are constantly bending over and accommodating the rest of the world. We speak your languages, we know your culture, and we really make it easy for you to communicate with us. So I'm doing this as an example to let you know that if you want to have true and real dialogue, maybe that is something we should also think about as well, and maybe introduce Kiswahili, Shona, and one of the other of our languages into the conference so we too can talk in a language that we can identify well with. So to respect the German audience and the fact that we're in Germany, I'm going to give my talk in German. I speak rather fast, so I'm going to try and make it slower for the interpreters so that they can give the right translation to what I have to say. So thank you for having me here. Ich werde auf Deutsch reden.
So as I said, I'll speak in German. I'll talk about development, cooperation and local commitment and innovation, about energy solutions, renewable energy solutions, and I'll talk about my foundation.
Worüber ich rede, you see, I think in many languages, worüber ich rede ist die wichtige.
I'll talk about the importance of including everyone as we build a holistic and clean energy system that allows everyone to participate. Not only us, the experts, not only those who have a lot of knowledge, who have a university diploma. It has to be inclusive for everyone. And it's good to have all this technology. We've heard a lot about the technology and what we can use it for in order to drive this global change. And we've been introduced to many different layers of this change. And one layer that I don't hear about often is behavior. So how should I behave as an individual? So what do we need to do in order to change the world for the better? And I'm talking about our environment in total, not just about energy. And we only ever talk about energy consumption. But we need to talk about much more. We need to talk about our behavior, our perception of the world, our perspective on the world. What do we want to change in the world? And the problem that I see is that we want the world to change without changing ourselves. So the solutions we have are all about, well, you'll use less energy, but you can keep living like you used to live. But that's unrealistic to me. And I have to warn you, I'm never politically correct. If I'm told that I need to buy a Tesla car because it's electric, but then you have 100 Tesla cars on this small street and nobody walks at home, then it's just something to calm your conscience. But it doesn't change the fact that there are 100 cars in the street. So how should I change? Should I perhaps walk? Should we ensure that we don't need to move that far? Should I live closer to nature? And by that I mean, why do I need to consume that much? Why do I need to consume for instant gratification and for consumption's sake? We are all very, very lazy. We talk about changing the energy system and changing the way we use energy, but we are making things too easy for ourselves. We use different methods without changing our behavior. So what do I mean by that? And this is something that is much more pronounced in the Western world. So look at the idea of construction. So 40% of emissions stem from the construction sector. Why is that? Well, It's because we use concrete for everything. And if you look at large cities, Berlin, Hong Kong, New York, then you see that everything is sealed. So you see a few planted trees, but essentially we've sealed the planet. And then we wonder why it's getting hot, even though we've just plastered the entire soil. So CO2 has no way of actually getting into the soil. And you have to see this from a scientific point of view. I'm not a scientist, but the world, the globe is actually able to sustain itself. So CO2 goes into the soil and it grows out of the soil in plants. And then it keeps at a healthy level. But we talk about this too little. We need to stop sealing our cities and our soil. We need to see soil again. We need to start doing urban planning in a different way. I went to Oslo some time ago and I didn't see any soil. You can't smell the soil. So you have trees in a specific container, in a box, that gives them a little space to grow. And that was the moment when a woman fell over and she hit her head and she bled. So if she had fallen on the soil, well, the same happened to me at my grandma's. And, well, I grazed my knee and I grazed my wrist, and that was it. And, well, this woman had to be taken to hospital. It's a stupid example, but just think of this. It's a major change that is really a simple change. And we want everything to be comfortable and easy for us. And we're trying to cool ourselves without changing anything about our behavior. But we need to be able to see greenery again. We are now earthing is recommended by doctors, and people pay a lot of money to be recommended to do earthing. What does it mean? Well, it means you take off your shoes and you walk barefoot on soil. But here it's difficult. You'll have to walk very far before you even get to somewhere where you can take your shoes off. But that's the simple solutions that we need in order to see some change. And despite all the technological progress, I think we need to go back to the roots. We need to change our concrete cities into different cities, and that will make change happen. And I think one reason why emissions aren't so high in Africa is because 70% of our continent is rural. People live in rural areas. They see soil every day. And as ironic as it may sound, we say earth is also dirt. And dirt has become a negative word. My house is dirty. This is what we think of. We've somehow got this idea into our heads that we need everything to be sterile and very clean, without anything that has to do with nature. And that's a problem. We need to change that. It's not healthy for our soul nor for our bodies. We need the earth in order to survive. We need it in order for our planet to be in good health. And we need soil because we use harmful substances to build our houses. And it's very difficult to go back to the roots in Europe because you have advanced so far that it's not enough to just say, well, let's take away the concrete and put some pebbles there. Then people would say, oh no, we don't want that. There are even people who are saying they want to have a concrete floor in their garden so that they don't have that much work with it. And then they'll just have some flower pots. But this has nothing to do with living in sync with nature. So what I say, well, it may sound simple, and they say, oh, she's just this dreamer, and, well, also it doesn't cost anything. So, well, it doesn't help the investors. Well, sorry, but this is what we need to do. We need to go back, we need to be modest, and we need to make some small changes in order for big changes to happen. And this is about dialogue. Our partnerships, are they real? Are these partnerships where we actually talk to each other on an equal footing? Well, I don't think so. Is this cooperation fair? Are the agreements and contracts that we conclude really fair? Well, in my experience, they often aren't. They tend to benefit the West. We need to work with one another. This is the only way that we'll have sustainable development that will then result in sustainable change. We need to work together and join hands. And people ask me, so what do you do different? You criticize a lot, you talk a lot, so what do you do different? Well, I can only give you very small examples. I don't have much time. It's very easy, and maybe it's not really interesting for Europeans, but still it's about going back to the roots. We need to go back to the roots so that we can change something at the global level, because this is something that is a problem. My problem, or where I see the problem, is really our behavior. I want to illustrate this.
Affordable, accessible, and realistic. I think I spelled accessible wrong, but don't worry about that, another time. If you see the next picture, this is energy being used, and it's being used today, locally, in my rural area where I work. You see here a 3-stone cooking area, where the people generally cook. I said that 70% of the people in Africa and in Kenya live in the countryside. 80% of that 70% are smallholder farmers who live in huts that have no electricity and no running water. I don't see that as a problem because it's a different way of life. It doesn't necessarily mean they're poor, because that same person probably has 10 acres of land maybe, or even 20. It's just a way of life, and because they are not connected to the grid. If you look at that, you have the fireplace. This fireplace, 3 days, is how much fire they will use. The next picture, what we learned in India, unfortunately, they brought us charcoal. Charcoal, 1 tree at a time. This is 7 days of firewood, charcoal, from 1 tree. Now, what we have done with the community where we work with, we have created what is called an energy saver stove. This stove uses this much wood for 7 days. You might say, oh, this is simple, it doesn't have anything to do with us. But like I said, on the continent, 70% of the people live more like this than like you all live. So that's the dialogue I want. If you want to talk to us, be aware of this and take this seriously. Then comes, this is what has happened because we are cutting down all the trees. So this area that was full of trees, there are no trees because we cut them down for charcoal. What we then do is we continue with our traditional way of living, so we also have then these kind of huts where you notice there's no window. And I kid you not, people are living in these huts without windows and having that fire with the 3 stones. So what we have done is we have said, how did we live traditionally? And this is a video, and I hope it works. So if you watch this video, we used to have in our homestead a live hedge. The whole homestead was surrounded by trees that were grown specifically, have I put it on? Specifically to surround the homestead. You see everywhere there are trees. Everybody lived outside of the home. And yes, you've caught me out. This is not a real homestead, this is in the museum. It's only left in the museum to show how we used to live. All of our homesteads had trees around them, meaning that we had rain, the products we grew could live off the rain, could survive off the rain, and we had firewood because we took the dried branches off the trees. What we do at my foundation is we now teach the children to grow the live hedge with their parents. So these are homesteads. You can see there are no trees. They're growing a live hedge. And on top of that, what we do is we're creating something called a kitchen, an energy saver kitchen, Kendo. We build it together with the community, and this is what it then looks like. It costs about $300, the amount you can see already there. And what then happens is it's attached to the wall. You have no problem with smoke, so no problem with respiratory problems with cooking inside there. And this is what it then looks like inside. So they cook there, they use very little wood, and they sustain the trees because they don't cut down any trees anymore. And here you see now, this is one of our our families, this is their home, how it looks now, compared to the picture, if you remember, that you saw before. And then you'd ask me, what next? What does that mean? Not all of us live in huts, and not everybody wants to stay in a hut. What we're doing now with researchers in Germany is we are experimenting with the type of soil locally that can be used to build houses. They don't have to be round. They don't have to be huts. They don't have to have hay. They can be normal houses built from the earth and the resources locally. And the community works and creates these bricks or whatever the substances are in order to build their houses. And don't think it's just happening in Africa. In Austria, you have a house that has been built with rammed earth. This house is made purely out of earth. If anybody's interested, I can tell you the name of the architect. This is in Austria, and in Austria you have winter, summer, all the seasons. The same technique is used in Zimbabwe to build this hut. So what I'm trying to say, and I am done, I know I've run out of time completely, I'm sorry. What I'm trying to say is that if we go back a little bit and try to go back to the basics of who we are and where we're coming from, we can also find solutions. It's great, the shiny glitter and all that of technology, wonderful. But on our continent, 70% of the people do not have access to it. So for us, it's like, it's just going over our heads. So please, when you're talking about energy, renewable energy, the change, the transformation, the dialogue, please consider that you have the biggest continent. We are the most. We have the youngest population. We are the future. We are the breadbasket of the world at the end of the day. When you're thinking about the conversations you have, you must take Africa seriously. Thank you very much.